This week on Storyboard, ahead of Brahmāstra Part 1 Shiva's OTT release, we caught up with Ayan Mukerji and Namit Malhotra of Prime Focus and DNEG on the vision for the film and how tech and VFX played the role of breathing life into this vision, way forward for using VFX in Indian cinema and much more. Ayan also gives a sneak peek into what's in store for Part 2. We have Amaresh Godbole, who's the CEO of digital technology business at Publicis Groupe India, speaking to us about the digital spends during the Diwali and what are the kind of solutions that brands are looking for in the post-pandemic world. And we have ad industry veteran Ambi Parameswaran, who is launching a new book this week, All the World's a Stage, a personal branding story. Hello and welcome to Storyboard. I'm Shibani Gharat. There is no doubt that the future of VFX in Indian cinema is bright, with the likes of Bahubali saga mesmerizing the Indian audience with grandeur and visuals. Ayan Mukerji's much talked about film Brahmāstra Part 1 Shiva just proved that dreaming big shouldn't be a one-off. Although the film features mega stars such as Alia Bhatt, Ranbir Kapoor and Amitabh Bachchan in the lead, its world-class VFX somewhat manages to steal their thunder. And now this Ayan Mukerji's epic fantasy is all set for OTT release. I caught up with him along with Namit Malhotra, founder of Prime Focus Limited, chairman and global CEO of a 7-time Oscar-winning company, DNEG, that came on board as a producer for Brahmāstra. And I spoke to them about the vision for the film, how tech and VFX played the role of breathing life into this vision and way forward for using VFX in Indian cinema and much more. Listen in. At the outset, I must congratulate you on the success of Brahmāstra. In many ways, the film is a landmark film in terms of scale, in terms of technology, in terms of visual effects. It shows that India can produce and make films such as Brahmāstra that can compete with what we see, in the West. What does it feel to envision something like this and put life into a film such as Brahmāstra Part 1?
Oh, wow. First, thank you. Spoken very nicely about the film. I feel really good, and I feel grateful that something that we worked on so hard for so long has sort of brought us to a very good and a very interesting place. I'm super excited about the way the film has been received, but I'm even more excited about what it is that we can build from here on into the future. And quickly, before you direct a question, Namit, also I should just say that, it's an interesting moment for us that we're doing this interview together, because it's one of the few things that me and Namit are doing together as a media piece. And Namit, who is one of our producers on Brahmāstra and also the pillar really of the whole visual effects journey on the film, our relationship even beyond visual effects has been very interesting and deep in crafting this whole journey together and, hopefully crafting the future as well.
Over to you, Namit. I was reading somewhere that there were 2,400 VFX shots in Avengers Endgame and up to 4,500 in Brahmāstra Part 1. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You are right.
So, tell me, what role did tech play in enabling something, the vision that Brahmāstra had or Ayan had for Brahmāstra?
I really wanted to take this opportunity to bring something truly original for India, from India. And Ayan's vision was clearly in that realm to start with. The second most important thing was that because of the way he was approaching it, it was a very open door. Like most directors will be very fixated about what they want and how they want it. Here was Ayan, who was very easy about, let's figure out what's the best way to do it. Maybe even do things that even Hollywood or India has never done before. And therefore, collaborating on the vision, collaborating on techniques, on what we do first, what we do second, how we actually go about fixing the methodology of how the best quality experience is produced, not just visual effects. And that's where we spend a lot of our time talking. If you can dream it, we can do it. So there's nothing you can envision now that through the aid of technology and creative thinking that we can't execute.
That's a great thought, actually. You know, if you can dream it, we can do it. And you know, in many ways, what we saw in Brahmāstra was like someone has to do it for others to believe that okay, this is possible. Ayan, what is the kind of budget that was allocated for visual effects and VFX? You know, to make it happen to such a great
No, so
scale.
it's a complicated question. I would say it was about 30% of our overall budget that was invested in VFX. So here's what happened. You know, when I first met Namit, who is obviously through his life experience and achievement very not intimidated by visual effects. One of the first things he said to me was like, yeah, don't stress so much about the visual effects. Make the film, focus on the story. He himself, you know, was very passionate about the music, the way the overall emotional aspect of the story would play out. But from where I was standing, obviously I was intimidated by the visual effects, and I knew that it was, you know, like in Ye Jawani Hai Diwani, the songs were like, in a way, the pillar of the film. And from my perspective, while there was my story, I knew that the visual effects sequences were the pillars of this film. So, so that's how we sort of looked at the game, in a way. And I think what happened is he essentially helped to build that bridge for me to be not that intimidated eventually by the visual effects and get the film done. And even what you asked me, how we made the budget sort of play out on Brahmāstra 1, because technically we were trying to buy a quality in the film which was beyond what had happened in a Hindi film before. You know, we needed a budget beyond what had happened in a Hindi film before. That bridge we built very interestingly with Namit, you know, and because he, it's his company, it's all under him. We found a very interesting model to make it happen for Brahmāstra.
And
you know,
which was
financially as well.
Yeah, and which was the most difficult sequence to execute?
Well, so you know, the big sequence in our film is of course our climax.
Climax, yeah.
And Namit brought a very interesting thing to it, very disruptive, you know, play to it in the beginning, which is he encouraged us to start the movie with the climax, because he felt like if we crack it and solve it, that'll be amazing, right at the beginning. And somehow I was reckless enough to agree to his perspective, somehow, because it was a bizarre suggestion. Let's start with the climax. We'd not established ki Ranbir kaun hai film mein, Alia ka kya hai, but we started with this big, massive climax. But it was a very good suggestion eventually, we learned, because we took on the hardest part first. And it set the template for all the visual effects that were then, you know, going to work backwards from there and be integrated in the whole film. The sequence which we got stuck on was weirdly the sequence where the artist's character, Nagarjuna sir's character, takes on the truck and channels this massive like bull, Nandi energy behind him.
The Nandi bull sequence, you know, as we refer to it, I think had in the styling of it and in the visualization of what the story demanded and the time at which the story plays out, I think had some you know, needs, because they drive through the night, they'll get to that location, it has to be a day sequence. And what we found was that the power of the astras were colliding with the entire environment. And that became an issue, that because we paid heed to the story part, and then as we were starting to design the look of the power, it was kind of it was fighting against the blue sky and the
Just wouldn't look good in the day, essentially.
The day,
you know,
you know, the blue
just
sky.
energy against like daylight, basically.
So we had to really think up a way in which we had to trigger that, you know, that sort of moment where the power takes off and creates this, you know, complete focused environment in which that sequence plays out.
Interestingly, it doesn't end here. So having said that, I have to ask you this, and you know already what my next question is.
I'm not going to say anything, and I can't really say anything.
What's in store for Brahmāstra Part 2?
I think that one of the things we've achieved now with Part 1 is that we've got the foundational concept of this universe in place. You know, there were a lot of things we had to establish. What are these astras? How do they function? I think that's a little bit all in, and now we can really just belt out, you know, the story. I think definitely one of the things that's a given, that of course visually, and you know, we hope to make it bigger and more exciting. But more importantly, I think the energy of Dev's character, which is, you know, going to fuel part 2, is a far more dramatic, volatile character that we are going to, you know, develop here. And I think that just dramatically, part 2 and part 3 will be a lot juicier. You know, it'll be, yeah, just a lot juicier.
Over to you, Namit. We have seen that the Indian VFX sector is getting a lot of push from the state and the central government. It was also mentioned during this year's budget speech. What more is required in the coming days?
From an industry development standpoint, we do have to create an artistic pool that has to be much more comfortable and experienced at the same time in dwelling on these worlds and making sure that we can then work with filmmakers from inception to execution or delivery, as we say.
Can you explain the artistic pool part?
See, there's obviously, there are many different facets of what is termed visual effects, because you can have visual effects that have a lot of animals, or you can have visual effects that have different energies like fire or water. You've got to create specialized artist pools that can do each of these things very specifically.
Okay.
These are specific specializations that are needed to deliver that quality on screen.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where we got to create a deeper pool of artists who can do each of those aspects in a more credible or qualitative manner.
Okay.
And that's sort of where I think, and that's already happening, to be honest with you. It's already happening at a pretty fast pace, but the faster and the bigger it is, the better it's going to be.
My final question to you, Ayan. The box office release happened. How did it meet your expectations? And now it's getting released on OTT. Much wider audience will be able to see it through their mobile phones, through their laptops. So what are your expectations from this?
I'm actually very, very passionate about this streaming release. One thing I should just say is, and it was not something I was prepared for, which is that we continue to work on the film even after it released theatrically, and I feel that the version that's coming on Disney Plus Hotstar, other than the 3D component that we won't get on it, is in many ways a more refined version. You know, I've tweaked the edit and I added a few things, and there was some feedback that I got, and I realized that we'd made some decisions on the edit last minute. We refined the music, we worked very hard on the mix. So we've worked on this film, and I realized just from having been out this last couple of months that society has come to a point where a lot of people like just 1 degree of separation from me are waiting for the film to come on streaming to sit down and watch it. Because we are involved in this longer term storytelling, part 2, part 3, and then eventually the Astraverse, more people watching the film, settling down with it, understanding the concept is really important to me.
Yeah.
I also suspect, and we'll see how this plays out, that the manner in which you take in a film when you watch it in the cinema is very different from how you watch a film when you're sitting at home and watching it at your own sort of convenient pace. In a way, sometimes you can almost be less critical. You can also catch on to things that you've missed a little bit. A little bit of the heat of judgment is a little bit reduced. So, yeah, so I'm very passionate about it coming out on streaming.
All the best for that, and thank you so much. Thanks both of you for joining us today.
Thank you, Shiva.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, interestingly, Disney Plus Hotstar has released a campaign with Ranbir Kapoor, and it uses all the memes on the movie to promote the premiere. On that note, it is time for us to take a short break. On the other side, welcome back. This year, all of us celebrated Diwali like we used to after a gap of 2 years. But so much has changed in the matter of these 2 years. So how have these changes impacted Diwali spends? What are the kind of solutions that clients are looking for? To answer this, we are joined in by Amaresh Godbole, who's the CEO of digital technology business at Publicis Groupe India. Godbole leads the group's digital experience and technology agencies Digitas India and Indigo Consulting. His mandate also includes scaling up the Publicis Commerce D2C offering. Let's hear this conversation. Amaresh, welcome to CNBC-TV18.
Thank you, Shibani.
Amaresh, we are just meeting after the Diwali festivities are over. What was this festive season like in terms of spending from brands and from different organizations?
Right. So I think there are mixed views in the market about what the spends have been like. But if I look at it from a digital standpoint, I think it's been a very healthy Diwali for us, both from a media spending perspective, but more specifically, given what I look after, I think people really went all out to build experiences, build content, and really engage with their consumers during Diwali.
Yeah, and interestingly, this Diwali was, where everyone was out there. Everyone was shopping, going, meeting their friends, their family members. It was like a Diwali that we celebrated together.
Absolutely.
After a gap of 2 years. Also, over the past 2 years, a lot of digital consumption has increased. So, how do you weigh in both of these dynamics, and what was it like when it came to, having Diwali on digital?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, this is probably the first proper physical Diwali that people have had, right? So I think what was toned down was maybe, more of the virtualization of experiences where, earlier you were doing things like creating experiences where you could share Diwali with your family because you weren't together and so on. What did take off, I think, was purchase, commerce, D2C, discounting, special packages for Diwali, special products developed for Diwali. So there, I think digital consumption has continued to increase. And I mean, as you know, increasingly there's behavior where even if people go to a store, they're constantly comparing online and checking for prices. So in fact, some of the stuff that we built for our clients is to exactly combat that. So for example, for one of our clients, we built an application which is powered by WhatsApp where the retailer can instantly price match Amazon, so that if they have a customer in front of them and they're like, hey, Amazon has this Diwali discount and these guys don't, they can request the company and instantly give that discount.
Yeah. Having said that, what else are your clients looking for in terms of these digital solutions today?
That there's a need to build a meaningful direct relationship with your consumer. Right, and when I say a direct relationship, it could be customer experiences or marketing experiences that help make purchase decision. But increasingly, even if you're an omni-channel brand, right, if you're a CPG or a retailer, you realize that if you're going to build for the future, you also need to have a direct-to-consumer presence. You need to be able to sell to them directly. Otherwise, we've seen instances like razor brands coming in and disrupting a category and so on. So you need it for flanking. Then I think there's also a lot more emphasis on building relationships after the sale, which I think was an area that certain categories ignored earlier, right? But today you realize that you can build a lot of life cycle value from a customer by engaging with them after the sale, and I think that's a new emphasis that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, and you've joined Publicis back after like a short stint at Google. So what have been your key focus areas over the past couple of months? I believe it was the start of the year when you came back.
So we've got our agencies, Digitas and Indigo, and then we've got Publicis Commerce, D2C. So these are the P&Ls I look after. But there's also developing emerging capability. So we had 3 clear goals for this, right? So for Digitas and Indigo, which we see as Horizon 1 or already at scale, agencies, it's always about growth and profitability. And I think we are well on track on that. There was some course correction required. And to give you a flavor, Digitas is going to end with its best performance ever till date at this year. I think the more exciting ones for me as an individual have been commerce. So commerce is, that's the one that can unlock exponential growth for you, right? And to give you a sense of the numbers, I mean, it's honestly just been a rocket. So from 21 to 22, we've doubled our revenue. And the businesses that we run right now, in 23, will be 3.5 times 22. So therefore, from FY21 to FY23, the business has grown 7x. So that is massive, and I mean, it's very, very exciting for me. And the last one, which I enjoy from a developmental perspective, is emerging capability. So we set ourselves the goal of having capability and proof of concept for Web3 and Metaverse. We had our first India case for Metaverse with Boat some time back. So that was very, very exciting for us. And now we're engaging on NFT projects, blockchain applications, and that's really exciting. And we've got more demand than we can handle. So right now we're only focusing on group clients.
And you mentioned commerce. If you can, highlight or let us know some of the key trends in D2C commerce space that we are seeing.
So before I get into the trends, the slight background to this is that till say about a year back, there are pure play D2C brands, right, which have launched over there. So I'm keeping those aside. But if you're more of a traditional CPG player, auto, retailer, you felt that, just being on marketplaces would be enough for you. But then suddenly with fees going to 25-30%, the margin erosion made people realize that, hey, I also need my own brand presence to get to customers directly. So now a lot of our clients come from there, right, where they're saying that, okay, I need to connect with my customer directly. And the biggest challenge over there is the cost of acquisition, because it does take a lot of effort and a lot of investment to get people to D2C. So our view on this is that to optimize for that, you need to look at commerce as a program, because commerce is not just building a platform, commerce is not just doing the media for it. You need to look at it holistically and start with the objective of cost of acquisition as your end goal. So the three trends that, in terms of go-to-market that I'm seeing that people are using to drive down the cost of acquisition, one is collaborations. So a lot of brands are getting together to do co-marketing, which kind of drives down the cost. You've got opportunities like, apps like Cred, which are increasingly encouraging D2C plays.
Yes.
The second one, which I'm seeing is the leveraging creators and the whole social commerce piece. And I think you'll see that spike up in a big way in the coming year. And there are platforms which are building specifically to do social commerce. And I think the last one, which I touched upon from a Diwali perspective, was also creating products for D2C or innovative packaging. So one reason that people come online is to get discounts. But what if they could get experiences that are personalized, for example, which you can't do in a store, right? So what is it that differentiates you from the retail experience is what people are thinking about now.
That's a great thought. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Shibani.
It is time for a short break. On the other side, we have ad industry veteran Ambi Parameswaran, who is launching a new book this week, All the World's Stage, a personal branding story.
Hey, इनको अपना शो दिखा दे.
Welcome to this world-famous show.
Hey, Messi. What?
FIFA World Cup begins. Mbappe moving with the ball. Neymar. Brilliant from Messi.
फुटबॉल वर्ल्ड कप 20 नवंबर से जियो सिनेमा पे. इससे बड़ा कुछ नहीं.
आज ध्रुव के स्कूल से फोन आया, कहने लगे कि फीस भरो वरना कल से स्कूल आना बंद. क्या कहती हूँ कि बाप की गैर जिम्मेदारी की सजा बेटे को मत दो. तुम तो टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस लिए बिना ही चले गए.
PolicyBazaar.com पे 1 करोड़ का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 430 रुपए महीने से शुरू.
In our country, everybody, there is a room for everybody. There is a growth. It just started. If we are talking this scale of multiply 3, I mean 300 times actually he spoke. So there is so much of growth in it for. But what we require, to understand is how do we manage these entire stakeholders through the journey of this truck. So for example, there's a small operator, whatever you may define, 1 vehicle, 2 vehicle, 3 vehicle. If you are able to provide him through the journey support system, you have a robust ecosystem to support. I'm telling you, everyone in the system will thrive.
Welcome back. After writing many noteworthy books like Spring, Sponge, For God's Sake, Nawab Nudes and Noodles, advertising veteran Ambi Parameswaran is launching a new book this week, All the World's Stage, a personal branding story. The book actually works like a roadmap towards what, why and how of personal brand building. To tell us more, we are joined in by the author himself on the show. Congratulations on yet another book. I have read all your books cover to cover, and this one is much different as compared to the other books. Other books were laced with case studies and examples from the work that you have done over the years, worked on different brands, and those examples were there in the other books. But this one is sort of like a fictional story kind of a thing that you have written. Tell us more about it, and also the title is very interesting, All the World's Stage, which is borrowed from Shakespeare. Yes, so
okay.
Tell us more about that.
So the idea of this book came up during the lockdown, and I got a call a few days later from IIT Madras saying, look, we want to do something for our alumni, can you deliver a talk? So one talk I gave on branding, what is called Branding 101. Second talk I gave on living the brand, which is B2B branding. The third talk I gave on building your personal brand. Literally a week later, I got a call from someone who said, look, we attended that talk on personal branding. Can you do that for our, people. And that led to another talk, another talk, another talk. And then I said, look, there is something happening with personal branding. So I started collecting, articles like, books and articles, started reading them. And then I broadly had an idea that I should write a book on personal branding.
And here, of course, there is a character called Ambi, but you have mentioned right at the beginning of the book how personal branding helped you when you no longer were a CEO of an XYZ organization. Can you share how can an individual build a personal brand while working for a company or an organization?
Okay, I think in certain professions, building your personal brand helps your organization, right? So
advertising for sure. We have seen how mustache or a topi has really worked.
I mean, the fact that going and giving talks, meeting new people, writing articles, and let's say coming on your show, giving interviews, all this helps you as an individual. It also helps your company because you're talking about your campaigns, etc., etc. It helps your company. So it helps both ways. The dicey thing there is, and I think I've discussed that in the book, is that when do they start operating at cross purpose? And that's something one has to watch out for. I cannot, if I'm working in a company, I cannot build my brand at the cost of my company's brand. So I always have to be clear, this is what my company stands for, and whatever I say or do on my personal space should pull in the same direction. Like for example, if I'm working in a company, I cannot go and write an article which is defamatory about a brand we work on, right? It's not correct, right? So I don't do that. But if you are able to do this, ride this, double header, the two-horse thing, then when you get out of a full-time job, you can then have your horse and ride that horse. It's good to have something addition to work as a passion, because through that you will meet a lot of interesting people, which may end up helping you in your work as well. Like for example, you are an anchor, you are a television journalist, you are a recognized person, but you also have a second life. You are an athlete, right? You run marathon, you run God knows how many marathons, how many of those mountain climbing stuff you've done. That's your passion.
Correct.
But through that, you can meet very interesting different people.
Yeah.
So when you use the term networking, a lot of people say, yaar, networking is very cheapskate. Like you go to a party and distribute your visiting card. That's not networking. The real networking is developing a parallel group of people whom you're with, who you're passionately involved with, and therefore you're spending time, effort. It could be like what you're doing. It could be a running group. It could be an NGO. It could be an educational institution you're involved with, or it could be a music circle. It could be a painting circle. It could be anything.
Finally, before we go, who is this book for? Who should read it?
In the book, I presented one character as Ambi, right? I mean, all the other characters are fictional. And I've also mentioned that this Ambi in this book is much younger than me, right? Much younger, 20 years younger than me. The reason is that I wanted this conversation to be among, say, 4 or 5 people who are in the 45 kind of an age group, right? So this book is meant for anyone from the age of, let's say, 20, 21 to 40, 45. I'm not saying that if you're beyond 45, you can't build your personal brand. You can. But the earlier the start, the better it is.
Ambi, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us and sharing these insights about personal branding.
Thank you very much.
With that, it's a wrap on Storyboard this week. You can catch all of our content on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Thanks for watching. We will be back same time next week. See you soon.